and welcome to Telewizja Republika. The Biden administration officials, as reported by the New York Times, are voicing concerns about how Russia has figured out ways to counter many of the weapons the US has sent to Ukraine. This concern, surfacing just as the long-awaited Ukraine aid is set to arrive, appears counter-effective and highlights the lack of plan and insecurity within the current US administration. Despite the resources and support, there seems to be an underlying fear that Russia is regaining its footing and could leverage a potential ceasefire or frozen conflict to its advantage, as Russia was doing in the past many times. The biggest news in Europe right now, however, is the assassination attempt of Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico. The assailant Juraj Čintula is associated with the right-wing pro-Russian extremist group Slovenskí branči. According to investigative journalist Szabolcs Pani, this group has troubling links with Russian bodies and even received training from a former Russian Special Forces operative. Yes, Spetsnaz is what we are talking about. This connection underscores the persistent and dangerous influence Russia continues to exert through extremist networks in Europe. On the Kharkiv front line, Ukrainian forces have managed to stabilize the situation despite a new offensive launched by Russia with 35,000 troops. President Volodymyr Zelensky reported that Ukrainian forces are effectively using artillery, drones and infantry to counter the Russian advance. The defense actions have been intense, and especially in the critical areas of Pokrovsk direction in Donetsk Oblast and Kupiansk in Kharkiv Oblast. Additional Ukrainian forces are being deployed to these regions to strengthen the defense. Lastly, we address the recent Ukrainian strikes on Russian infrastructure. Ukrainian military intelligence drones attacked an oil base in Russia's Rostov region, causing significant disruptions, according to a source in Ukraine's military intelligence agency. Additionally, a long-range missile attack severely damaged a weapons depot at the Belbek airfield in Crimea, impacting Russia's military aviation capabilities. These strikes, although criticized by US officials for potentially destabilizing the global energy market, as if this market hadn't been destabilized in the past, underscore Ukraine's resolve to retaliate against Moscow's continued aggression. You can join us on rockracon.com. That's our website and that's our Substack account. Here you'll find also our new YouTube channel, as most of subscribers of Telewizja Republika YouTube channel do not speak English, and we are mainly the Polish-speaking television. We have decided to set up a new YouTube account, so all the English versions of Racon will be available in one place. So if you do want to be in touch, you can also click subscribe to this particular YouTube channel, and of course you can leave us your email on Substack so that we can be in email contact. By the way, I'm the one who reads those emails, so if you do want to be in touch with me, you can do it via Substack. And that's what we are going to talk about on my show. My name is Michał Rachon. This is Racon. And we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
And tonight, our friend and common guest, Mark Toth, who is an author, along with John Sweet, of the text regarding the current situation on the Russian-Ukrainian war, the war that Russia wages on the territory of Ukraine. Mark, great to have you again on our program.
Pleasure to be back, Michael. Thank you.
Mark, before we move to the analysis that you made and published for The Hill, I'd like to have your say, in your opinion, about the thing that grabbed the attention, understandably, grabbed the attention of the media all over the world. As we speak, yesterday, Slovakian Prime Minister Fico was attacked, was shot by a certain man, certain individual who was caught. And it's very hard not to ask questions regarding the geopolitical context, especially if we take into account that not more than 2 weeks ago, Daily Mail published a text about the Western intelligence agencies warning governments that support Ukraine that the Russian group of saboteurs and people related to the Russian military intelligence were deployed in Europe to try to influence the situation in the states neighboring Ukraine and supporting Ukraine. It's very hard not to ask questions in that context.
Yeah, it's concerning. John and I have actually been working on an article that we've not just been able to find enough time yet to get it done, but we are concerned about the uptick in Russian campaigns, active campaigns that are going on in Europe. Now, while it's too early to know in terms of Slovakia and Robert Fico, because there are some interesting dynamics there. Fico clearly is pro-Putin to the extent of positions that he's taken, slowing Ukraine down and the like. But it appears, based on the early reports, that the man that did the assassination attempt was a pro-Russian supporter. So that's a little bit perplexing. But it's not outside the parameters of the Russian playbook to take out one of their own to create chaos or to create a boomerang effect. Like maybe their idea or their calculus was that if we take out Fico or try to, we'll create sympathy for Fico's positions and let that grow, that it's the West trying to do this, that the West is trying to be the bad guys, when in actuality they could be behind it. But I have to caution, viewers that it's just too early to know.
Yeah, there is a wide variety of the possible interpretations. We are asking questions here in Telewizja Republika, also keeping in mind that, however, Robert Fico is obviously a politician who was vocal in a kind of maybe not direct support to Russia, but a kind of reserve towards Ukraine. On the other hand, it's important that he decided to stop blocking the European part of the Ukrainian military aid. On the other hand, the Hungarian Prime Minister didn't decide to withdraw his veto. He simply left the room. But it was the room that Robert Fico decided to stay in a few weeks ago. So we may also think about this perspective as a kind of a warning sign, whatever you call it. But as you mentioned, it's too early to draw any conclusions. However, it's important to keep the important questions in mind as we speak. But you are arguing that what is going on right now around Kharkiv, the Ukrainian city being attacked constantly by Russia, that Kharkiv may play an important role in the Russian strategy of another wave of attacks to finally take control over Ukraine. Could you walk us through this idea?
Sure. We're still in the early stages in Kharkiv. It's clear, based on varying reports, that at least 30 to 50,000 Russian troops have massed along that border. U.S. intelligence services have been telegraphing that for several weeks now, that buildup was occurring. Now, it should point out at high altitude, 30 to 50,000 troops is not going to be enough to take a city of pre-war was roughly 1.4 million people. It's Ukraine's second largest city. However, they clearly want to create a pressure point there, and to create, the potential for stretching Ukraine even further across the 600-mile battlefront. And I suspect that's likely what we're starting to see there, and that what we need to be looking at is where Russia chooses to start deploying these other 500,000 purportedly that they've mobilized. Now, these are raw conscripts. They're not, they've not been stood up as an effective army yet. They've got uniforms, they've got guns, that's about it. But Kharkiv definitely is showing us that Putin is out to do something and probably stretch Ukraine in that regard.
You are actually claiming that we may think of similarities in the past. We all know that we shouldn't analyze the current war with the tactics from the war from past. But on the other hand, there are some lessons to be learned from the history. You are making a claim that in a way this could be similar to the idea of offensive in Ardennes by by the German Third Reich in the last days of its existence. Why do you claim that it might be the case actually?
Right, Michael, you're right to point out that it's difficult to always go back and make parallels to history. And I can't recollect who said this, but history often rhymes, and we're seeing a little bit of a rhyme here in terms of what happened in Bastogne in Belgium during December 1944, and that Hitler thought his best play to defeat the Western Allies, so that he could settle them, create a peace settlement with them to go on and continue fighting Russia. Putin may be seeing the same thing. He may be looking at pressuring Kharkiv and seeing where else along that 600-mile front line Ukraine might break is his best way of collapsing Western support for Ukraine, and at the same time collapsing internal domestic support for the war inside of Ukraine. So from that standpoint, from a grandiose, full-size battlefield viewpoint, it does look like Putin is up to something bigger, even if the troop size at this point in Kharkiv, in and around Kharkiv itself, is smaller. That's why John and I are saying it's a central point, and it's one that he probably wants to make for domestic reasons, but also as a means and a tool of defeating Western support for Ukraine.
This is also very interesting because of the dynamics of the situation. We know, we are aware, actually the Western media is full of analyses and reports regarding the level of, well, we are talking about war of attrition here, and since Ukraine is a democratic state, we have an access, maybe not to direct data regarding the level of losses of Ukraine, but to the level of tiredness of the state and the society. But on the other hand, we got also some limits of the quasi-totalitarian state, which is Russia, and it's very hard to assess what is the level of the pain possible to overtake by Russia. Based on what you said, after Bakhmut, after this long-standing meat-grinding attacks by Russia, is Russia in a position to seek for a peace solution, keeping what they grabbed till the moment we are talking about? Is that the situation that Russia might be in your opinion?
Yeah, Michael, that's great insight. I mean, exactly, that's what Putin wants to accomplish at this point. They've started to brand it as a sanitary zone. I don't know if you recollect, but several weeks back, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, had said that. They're clearly wounded. It's a wounded Russian bear, even though they want to keep this forward-looking appearance, if you will, of being the victors in the battlefield. They've been hurt. It's a problem, what they're facing. The fact that they're only massing 30 to 50,000 troops around Kharkiv is telling. That's not a massive army. It's big, but it's not massive and not one likely to take the city. So from that standpoint, I do think they are. But as you and I have discussed multiple times before, the West simply cannot trust that kind of agreement. And then I'd quickly add here, if that kind of peace agreement comes about, that's just so Putin can reset, rebuild his armies, and start again. But I have a feeling the next time that he comes, it's not just going to be Ukraine; it's going to be your country, the Baltic states. So we've got to be careful there. But one slight, caveat: there's a fine line. Bastogne was won back in World War II because of the grit of the 101st Airborne, whom my colleague John Sweet is actually, former member of that airborne group. Not in World War II, mind you, but more recently.
We know John quite well. He
Right.
he is a retired army man, but not that retired.
Right. Yeah, not that retired. But there's a fine line between that kind of grit and a fine line where psychologically, people can collapse. And I think Ukraine is at that moment where they as a country need our support as the U.S., and they need a plan to win. We've got to make sure that that grit continues and that they don't slip into that psychological fear that all is lost. And I think the delay in funding, the delay in getting them the capabilities have caused us to reach that point in time. And it's a dangerous point in time. I don't want to underestimate that. I still think this is winnable. I still think we can, come back from this. but we can't keep going along the path that we're doing, which is why John and I the other day in the New York Post called for God's sakes, Mr. President, get a winning plan in Ukraine. This isn't working.
Yeah, this is the thing that you mentioned it. We've been discussing it for quite a while. In the text that we are talking about right now, you are making very important point. We are talking about the military units that are capable to deploy to any place in the world within 18 hours. Those units are famous for exactly these capabilities. And we are talking also about the problem with allowing Ukraine to hit Russia as Russia is hitting Ukraine. We are talking effectively about the political sanctuaries for Russia because Ukraine is not allowed officially by its allies to hit within the borders of pre-war Russia. Why this is a problem? Why this is a thing that the writers and authors like you, John, and other military experts come back to this issue over and over again?
Yeah, Michael, it's the $1 million question. It's mind-boggling. Clearly, when you give an enemy sanctuary, and I've racked my brains, I can't think of any major conflict in the world where the attacker gets to attack the other side and the other side cannot attack that country. And yet that's the rules that the West is saying that Ukraine has to play by. Thankfully, increasingly, countries like the UK are saying enough of this. This is ridiculous, and we're seeing the result of that. Even though Blinken is signaling now, but between you and me and your viewers, I'm a little worried that there's some doublespeak there. But even though he's signaling now in Kiev that yes, it's okay, they can go and attack Russia using our weapons. We don't encourage it. Blah blah blah. That's progress. That's better. But we're seeing in Kharkiv the effect of them Russia being afforded sanctuary in the past, because Ukraine knew that they couldn't use these new ATACMS and older equipment to go and attack these troops and interdict them before they reached Ukraine. And so you can see just the way that Ukraine aligned its defenses along Kharkiv into Vovansk to the east of it, where they didn't want to commit too close to the border because they couldn't attack those troops just on the other side, yet those troops could attack them. So really what we're kind of looking at, to set the stage for the battlefield presently, and again, as you know, battlefields are fluid, but right now Russia's about 15 miles away from being able to use their 152 millimeter artillery to begin shelling Kharkiv city itself. And that's where, why wait for that? That's where, Ukraine needs to not only use those ATACMS and other means to go after these Russian forces formulating. They need to do it inside of Russia. I mean, that's the plain truth. Why should we let them get that next 15 miles so that Kharkiv starts getting destroyed? No, let's take the offensive, let's lean into it and do that. So, when you look back, the madness of the point that you just made, is you can see it on the battlefield where you're fighting in ways that just make no logistical sense. They make no tactical sense, and ultimately, collectively, none of it makes any strategic sense. It's madness out of the White House. I have not understood it.
In the long enough timeline, it also lacks a political sense. If the sense is to help Ukraine win the war, I really do not want to think about the other alternatives and other logical solutions. Mark, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for your text of you and John. We are waiting for more from you, gentlemen, and hope that we are going to have a chance to talk again.
Great. Always a pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, you can leave us your email here on rackracon.com. That's our Substack account. And by the way, we are linking on this website our new YouTube profile. You are, of course, welcome to subscribe to Telewizja Republika channel. However, Telewizja Republika is a Polish-speaking television. Most of our viewers do not speak Polish. So we decided to start building our own YouTube channel, which is Rackracon. You can find it on our Substack. So if you like our show, if you like to be in touch with us, if you do want to have all the information about all the programs that we are recording and broadcasting, click the subscribe button and share it with your friends. And through your social media. We come back with this program on Monday. Till that day, stay safe. Ciao, ciao. Bye.